will be off and put away. Walking down here to the front of the auditorium, I noticed that quite a few of you have your phones out. Please turn them off and put them away. All right. Today we are fortunate to have Attorney Campbell with us this morning, who's going to talk to you about a very important topic, the social host liability law. So I would please expect you to give him your undivided attention. This is really important information, and it's for your benefit. Attorney Campbell.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Rich Campbell. I'm a lawyer in Boston. I'm a trial lawyer, so my job is to get up in front of juries, and I'm a civil trial lawyer, not a criminal trial lawyer. So my job is to get up in front of juries and to either defend people in corporations or to represent people in corporations, usually trying to get money from other people. This presentation will deal in part with criminal penalties related to some of these statutes that we're going to talk about, but also potential civil outcomes, penalties, awards that could happen if these statutes that you're going to learn about this morning are broken. This presentation that you're going to hear right now was created by my father over the last 15 years or so. He had, he's a partner of mine. I work with my father. He had the opportunity to represent a woman probably 15 or 20 years ago. She was a former nun, and she was driving her car home from the grocery store and got hit and severely injured by a young man who had been at a house party consuming alcohol that had been provided by parents. He was underage, and my father was retained by this person to try to help her go after the people that had thrown the party. And at the time, there was really no way for a person injured in such an accident where an underage drinker had consumed alcohol that had been provided to them illegally by somebody else. You couldn't go after those people for money damages, and she was severely injured. She could never work again, that sort of thing. So that started a decades-long effort and crusade by my father, and now by me and other lawyers in our law firm, to, one, try to influence the law, and two, to go out into the community and educate students and parents about these laws that most people are pretty ignorant about. So the main law that I'm here to talk to you tonight, this morning about, is the social host law. That's the site you see there, MGL, Chapter 138, Section 34. And I want you to think about this brief little section of the law as I go through this first part of this presentation. The important part of the text of the law is whoever furnishes alcohol for a person under 21 years of age shall be punished. Fine of up to $2,000, imprisonment up to a year, or both. Now, lawyers and legislators pay very close attention to words in statutes like this. And the words that you should pay attention to and think about are whoever, the word furnishes, and the word shall. We'll talk about the word whoever in a few minutes. The word furnishes is also important, and that has its own slide dedicated to it. In common language, you think furnish means to give. Well, this word has a different, much more broad meaning that could affect any one of us in this room. And the word shall. The word shall means that if a court finds that you're guilty of violating this law, whether or not to punish you is taken out of the hands of the court must punish you. And they must punish you either by sentencing you to 1 year in jail, a fine of up to $2,000, or both. So punishment is not optional under this statute. So what's the typical scenario that you'll probably hear about this time of year with prom season approaching? Private party at your house. Either your parents allow you to have a party, or your parents are gone and you invite friends over. And you'll see that theme running consistently through a lot of these slides that I'm going to be showing you. If parents are involved, typically parents have these kinds of parties because they want to provide a safe location for kids to drink alcohol. So the idea that parents sometimes have is, I'll buy the alcohol, I'll get all my friends, all my kids' friends together, I'll take the car keys, they won't be able to get behind the wheel of their car, I'll be able to control stop any bad things from happening, and the party will go uneventfully. That's the idea. Alcohol is either provided by the host, by you if you're hosting the party, or by your parents, or you permit people to come into your home or your apartment or wherever and consume alcohol. The assumption is everybody's going to have fun and nobody's going to get hurt. The problem is these parties typically do not involve social drinking. These parties involve drinking with a purpose, and the purpose is to consume as much alcohol as you can to get drunk. This is a keg stand. Some young men are holding her upside down over a keg. She's got the tap of the keg in her mouth. She's drinking the beer. This is not social drinking. This is drinking to get drunk, right? Now, let's talk briefly about some statistics involved with drinking like that. 1,700 college-age students, between 18 and 24, die each year from consuming alcohol for that purpose. About 600,000 students per year are unintentionally injured while under the influence of alcohol. About 700,000 students per year are assaulted by other students who are under the influence. More than 100,000 students, and that's probably a much higher number than you see there because that's a very unreported crime. More than 100,000 students of college age are victims of alcohol-related sexual abuse, and about 5% of four-year college students have involvement with the police arising out of the consumption of alcohol. Now, this is a house up on the North Shore of Andover. This is the house of Mr. and Mrs. Smits. This picture was in the newspaper up in Andover. That's how we got it. Mr. Smits is a commercial airline pilot, and I believe his wife is a stay-at-home mom. They've got a daughter, approximately y'all's age, about 16 or 17 years old. She asked to have a sleepover, and the parents said yes. The sleepover was going to be a few of her girlfriends. In this day of text messages, Facebook, whatever, that small little sleepover erupts into a huge house party, and the parents were home. Mom and Dad were up in their bedroom behind a closed door. They kind of had the blinders on, they had their fingers in their ears, they were pretending that this whole nightmare wasn't happening. Kids come, there's people out on the front lawn, there's people in the backyard drinking, there's people in the basement drinking. One of the neighbors calls the police and knocks on the front door, and the daughter panics, goes up to her dad and says, "The police are here." So Mr. Smits goes downstairs and pleads ignorance to the police officer, who is incensed that a parent is home while this huge drinking party is going on. The father basically pleads ignorance. "I did not know that this was going on, therefore I wasn't breaking the law." Well, Mr. Smits was hauled into court along with Mrs. Smits. That's Mrs. Smits, that's Mr. Smits. Again, this picture came out of the local newspaper. So picture your parents in this particular awkward position where they're their photos in the paper related to a drinking party. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Smits had the charges dropped against them, and the charges that were pressed were violating that social host statute that I showed you a little while ago. So, more talking about how lawyers think. One of the things that lawyers talk about are bright line tests. So, bright line tests. One example of a bright line test is, you step over the line, you're breaking the law. Before you step over the line, you're not breaking the law. The drinking age of 21 is a bright line test. The day before you turn 21, it's illegal to drink. The day after, the day you turn 21, and every day thereafter, it's legal. Now, that's you personally consuming alcohol. You can get in trouble for doing that. You can have possession charges, you can have drinking underage charges, that sort of thing. But the act of permitting an underage person to drink is also illegal. And that's what the social host statute is. So back to this statute, the word whoever. Common parlance, whoever means whoever. It means you, it means anybody who furnishes alcohol for a person under 21 years of age shall be punished. Now, the next slide here is that word furnished. What does furnish mean? Well, furnish shall mean to knowingly or intentionally supply, give, provide. Now, that's what we typically think of furnish to mean. But here's the kicker. Furnish also means to allow to possess. So you are furnishing alcohol to somebody under 21 years old when you allow them to possess it at a place that you control. So if your parents allow you, or allow your friends at your house to possess alcohol, they don't even have to drink it. They can be holding a beer in their hand. They possess it. Then they are violating the statute and they are subject to the criminal penalties that's set forth. If your parents are gone and you allow your friends to possess alcohol in places that you control, you are violating the statute and you are subject to the criminal penalties. And it doesn't matter how old you are because of this word, whoever. It doesn't say you have to be 21 to be subject to the statute. It's whoever furnishes, whoever allows people under 21 to possess alcohol shall be punished. This is the reason that I do this presentation is because people are not aware of this. They think house party, no big deal. House party is a big deal, and it's a big deal because of that fine and the potential for imprisonment for up to a year. So this is the first story I'm going to tell you. This is Trista Zink and Neil Bornstein. This is Mr. Bornstein is 17 years old in this photo. Ms. Zink is 16. This event that I'm going to tell you about happened in the mid-90s. And basically a guy named Brendan Neeram, who was a freshman at Syracuse University. And if Brendan Neeram comes home from Syracuse for Christmas, and he decides to have a party with all his high school buddies back at his house. His parents are gone, so they don't know what's going on. He invites several of his friends, including a guy named Billy White, over to his house. They drive up over the border into New Hampshire and buy several cases of beer. They buy some wine, and they go back to Brendan Neeram's house. They drink, each of them drink about 7 or 8 beers. Billy White has several glasses of wine too, and they're having a good time. Brendan's mom calls them and says they're coming home. So they decide to pick up and move the party somewhere else. Brendan notices that Billy White is pretty drunk, so he tries to take his keys from him, and Billy White refuses. And you can probably predict where this story is going. Billy White gets behind the wheel of his car to head to the next destination. Billy White strikes and kills Trista Zink and strikes and severely brain injures Neil Bornstein. Now, Billy White is prosecuted under manslaughter, the manslaughter statute, driving under the influence, the serious bodily injury statute, all statutes that I'll briefly touch on later in this presentation. But Brendan Neeram also has criminal charges pressed against him. And Brendan Neeram is charged under the social host statute, the statute that we just talked about. That's Brendan Neeram, clean-cut, handsome guy from a very affluent family. He hires a criminal defense lawyer, and the criminal defense lawyer advises him that, this social host statute isn't really enforced. So if you plead guilty, you beg for the mercy of the court, you're going to get probation. Well, Brendan Neeram does just that. He pleads guilty. He throws himself at the feet of the court, and in doing so, right before his sentencing, with Trista Zink and Neil Bornstein's parents behind him in the courtroom, he says, "At the time, my actions seemed harmless, but now I know all too well how terrible the outcome can be. If only I could have stopped Billy, this entire tragedy would not have happened. This constantly torments me." So in his statement to the court about his conduct violating the social host statute, he blames Billy White. He says, if I could have stopped Billy, then Billy wouldn't have done this terrible thing. He doesn't own any of the culpability. Well, the judge takes his guilty plea and proceeds to charge him to sentence him to 1 year in jail. Brendan promptly fires his lawyer, hires a new lawyer, and appeals the case up through the courts. And his theory, his lawyer's theories are, one, that word whoever doesn't mean what it means in common parlance. Surely the legislature didn't mean that this law should apply to whoever. It should really only apply to people who are 21. And second, that word furnish. You know, Billy didn't buy the beer. Billy didn't do all that stuff. They just had the party at his house. So those are the two grounds for the appeal. The judge hears the appeal and upholds the sentence. And in his decision, he says that in this tragic case, we hold that the word whoever, as used in the statute, means precisely that. As such, the defendant, a young college student with no criminal record, will serve a jail sentence, the sadness of which is overshadowed by the death of a 16-year-old child struck by another to whom the defendant furnished alcohol. So Brendan Neer hosted the party, and Brendan Neer spent a year in jail. So, as we go into prom season, think about that. High school is not carefree. These statutes apply to you today, and they apply to the conduct that you may undertake. Think about that while you're making these decisions. House parties, parties at apartments, parties in the woods. You'll hear about a case. You'll hear about a case that I'm involved with at the end of this presentation, where several young men cleared a party area in the woods. They put a fire pit, they ringed it with chairs, they have tables for drinking games. After a high school football game, they brought several young women, and lots of people were at this, but one of the young women was very drunk. After the party, she wandered off into the woods and she drowned. And one of the theories being advanced against these young men in the civil trial that is currently going against them is that the act of taking control of that piece of property in the woods, creating the fire pit, cleaning it, managing it, and inviting people to it, that was their location. They possessed that location, and therefore they furnished the place for people to consume alcohol. And it's not just you that are subject to these laws, your parents are as well. Now, you probably have people up on the stage talking to you about all the horrors of drinking and driving. Drinking and driving is not the only way that somebody can get hurt at a party. The idea of a parent being able to control the outcome by having a party in the basement. These next few slides that I'll talk about kind of debunk that idea. There is no predicting how bad things can happen when underage people are drinking at house parties. This is Michael Berry. He looks like he's about 11 in this photo, but he's 16 years old. They're in Haverhill. He was from Haverhill. He was invited to a party at the house of Ashley St. Jean, who was a 17-year-old girl. Ashley's mother, Nancy, would permit her to have host parties at their house every Friday night. Nancy St. Jean would sit in her recliner by the front door as the kids filed into the house and went to the basement. Sometimes the backpacks or bags that the kids were bringing the beer into the party would open and beers would spill out on the floor. Mom knew exactly what was going on. She had the same idea about controlling the outcome. You know, my kids are going to do this, they might as well do it under my supervision so I can make sure nothing bad happens. Michael Berry's invited to his first party at the St. Jean's house. He's 16 years old. He has no clue about how alcohol affects him. He gets drunk, he gets rowdy, he picks a fight, he's asked to leave the party. On his way out the door to show his displeasure to the St. Jean family, he punches out a window on a door, and in doing so, he slices his wrist. Well, Mr. Berry was found on a neighboring house, the porch of a neighboring house 2 days later. He had bled out and died. It was winter, so it was cold. He had bled out and died in the cold night that night, and it took several days to find him. This is Nancy St. Jean. She's sentenced to 6 months in prison for violating the social host statute. Now, before I get to this video that you're going to see here, along the same lines of you not being able to predict or observe bad things happening. One of the set of slides that I took out of this presentation had to do with another party up here on the North Shore. Girl, big raging party in the basement, hosted by the dad. The idea was to keep the kids safe. This young woman is down in the basement. She's really drunk. She falls backwards and cracks her neck on a stair. And the injury she suffers is called an internal decapitation. And what an internal decapitation is, when you break your neck and the displacement of your vertebra completely severs your spinal cord. From the neck down, your brain is no longer able to control your heart, your breathing. So she basically suffocated on the floor, laying on her back with her head up against the stairs. The party went around her for another 3.5 hours, people stepping over her dead body at that point because they thought she had passed out. They didn't figure out that she was dead until after the party was over and the father was trying to clean up the mess and get the drunk kids out. So the whole idea of being able to control bad stuff from happening by bringing it into your house is a myth. This is, you'll notice during this video that this woman has a southern accent. This woman, in a terrible thing that happened to her, happened down in West Virginia. They have a similar statute to ours. This is her 21-year-old son. He wasn't involved. This is her 17-year-old son. He asked to have a party. And the whole reason I show you this video and talk about this woman is, I've talked about the horrible car accident involved with Trista Zink. I've talked about Michael Berry, and I told you that story about the girl in the basement. But if you remember back to the words of this statute, nothing bad has to happen in order for you to face criminal penalties. The mere act of furnishing alcohol subjects you to legal risk. So this woman agrees to have a party for her son. She goes out and buys the beer. The deal is the mom collects the keys. She basically locks them in the basement. They can do whatever they're going to do, drink whatever they're going to drink. She doesn't tell the other parents that she's allowing that. It's just a sleepover, and everything will be fine. So the boys come over. She has the beer for them down in the basement. The party starts. And it's early. Really, nobody's really started drinking yet. A few kids have had a few beers, but somebody calls the police, and the police show up at her front door. And she is panicked. She sees them in the driveway, and she starts getting some of the kids who had consumed alcohol to gargle with vinegar to try to hide the smell on their breath. Well, the police don't believe her. They enter the house, they go to the basement, they find the boys, they find the beer. She gets arrested, and her husband gets arrested under their version of the social host law and charged. And the judge that she has the misfortune of being in front of is incensed at her because in that same community only a few months before, a similar house party had led to a tragic death of a couple of young women who had got behind the wheel of a car and had wrapped the car around a tree. So this judge decides, this is the law. I need to send a message to this community that the law is the law and we're going to enforce the law. So this woman is sentenced to 9 years in jail for a party where nobody got hurt. She and her husband both. Now they subsequently appealed that decision and the sentence. The sentence was reduced on appeal to 27 months. But this woman spent 27 months in jail for hosting a party where nobody got hurt. And in the end, when they did the blood work on these kids, 2/3 of the boys hadn't had anything to drink, and the ones who had had a few beers, none of them were legally intoxicated. She spent $300,000 of her family money defending herself in the criminal suits that put her in jail.
It's very other sentence. But very harsh. I never even let the parking ticket or anything. I was trying to save them, and I did. Nothing happened. But then, I just think, I should be the poster child for everything that, it's amazing to me that there's so many parties still going on. You see it in the paper, you see it everywhere, but nothing's happening. They're getting prosecuted, nothing's happening.
So you can see there she's got an orange jumpsuit on and she's in that sterile environment. This interview was recorded when she was in jail. So this slide just demonstrates that, these are the states that have some version of our social host law. So this is not unique to Massachusetts or in West Virginia. This is all over the country. Another statute that I'll briefly touch on is the manslaughter statute. Manslaughter is the unlawful killing of another without malice. Malice is state of mind. If I have a gun and I point it at you, and I pull the trigger and I shoot you and I kill you, I'm intending to do that. That's malice. What manslaughter is, if I take that same gun and I'm driving down the street and I'm trying to impress my friends in the back, and there's a park area with some houses on the other side, and I want to show my friends how tough I am, so I squeeze off a few rounds. Well, one of those bullets enters a house on the other side of the park and kills a person. I didn't intend to kill that person, but I'm subject to the manslaughter statute because the conduct is so outrageous. The risk of harm from that conduct is so terrible that you're subject to criminal penalties. Now, how does this come up in the context of alcohol? Well, this is Lexi Garcia, 15 years old in this picture, and she passed away after drinking a half a liter of vodka. The vodka had been given as a gift to her 16-year-old friend as a birthday present. And the person who gave the gift to this 16-year-old girl for her birthday was that girl's father. Her father gave his daughter a 1 liter bottle of vodka. His daughter promptly shared it with Lexi. They split it. Lexi decided to take a shower after throwing down a half a liter of vodka and disappeared for a while. A friend goes to find her and finds her face down in a tub, dead where she had drowned. This is the father. He was charged with manslaughter. And that outrageous conduct, the conduct that was so potentially harmful, was the providing his daughter with a liter bottle of vodka. Now, he pled guilty. He was sentenced to 5 years probation. This will happen again, and the next time it happens, with the sense of building outrage in our community, the person that does this isn't going to get probation. They're going to go to jail. And that's another thing to keep in mind. Serious bodily injury is another statute. If you're operating a motor vehicle under the influence and you hurt somebody, you injure them, you can go to jail and pay fines. The question is this is one of those lawyer things. What is a serious bodily injury? You think catastrophic injury in a car. Well, broken finger rises to the level of a serious bodily injury. So if you're drunk, you're operating a motor vehicle, this is another criminal statute that you could run into. Along those lines, this is a house out in the western suburbs. This happened back in the mid-90s as well. The parents were off on a trip. I think they were in Europe. The 17 or 18-year-old daughter decided to have a party. She had several friends. It was during the summer. So one of them, a guy named Billy Sine, was working down on Cape Cod. He decides after work at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon to get in his car and race out to the western suburbs to go to this party. He drinks until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and then decides it's a good idea to get behind the wheel of his car and head back down to the Cape so he can go to work. Well, he is racing down Route 24 towards the Cape and slams into, he's going about 90 miles an hour, he's bobbing and weaving through traffic, and he slams into a state police cruiser parked on the breakdown lane. That's his car, that's the trunk of the state police cruiser. The state police cruiser was occupied when it was struck, and the woman in there was her name was Trooper Ellen Engelhardt, and you can imagine the force of a car going 90 miles an hour slamming into a parked vehicle. Trooper Engelhardt was devastated. She lost part of her skull, she lost part of her brain, broken pelvis, broken arms, broken legs, catastrophic, life-changing, and ultimately life-ending injuries. That's Billy Sine at his sentencing. He was charged with OUI, reckless driving, and spent a long time in jail and has been released from jail. That's Trooper Engelhardt before the accident. She was a mother, she was an athlete, she was a vibrant woman. This is her from the point of the accident onward, this is at the sentencing, and that's her boyfriend, also a state trooper. Now, Trooper Engelhardt eventually succumbed to her injuries, and that happened only last year. Well, Mr. Sine had served his time for OUI and for reckless driving, had been released. When Trooper Engelhardt died, her death was directly related to the injuries she sustained in the accident. The Plymouth County DA pressed charges against Billy Sine for manslaughter. So now he faces another. That's him at his recent arraignment. 15 years if he's convicted. He's already been to jail for this. Remember Billy White? Well, Billy White served his time and he was released. As part of his, the terms of his release from jail, he had to not consume alcohol. Well, Mr. White, in his wisdom, goes to a 99 restaurant in the town where he struck and killed Trista Zink shortly after getting out of jail. He orders a beer at the bar. The bartender remembers this guy, and she thinks, I can't believe this guy is doing this. I can't believe that he's drinking. It was in the newspaper only a week ago that he's been released and he's not allowed to drink. She calls the police. Back in jail, 5 to 7 years for violating. Trista Zink, this was her right before she died. Neil Bornstein has recovered from his brain injury. That's Neil today. So, any one of these, a simple possession, if you're charged and you get it on your record, it stays with you. You have to report it. You have to tell people about it when they ask it. The common application, you guys will be doing this soon. You have to disclose on your college applications. Have you ever been convicted of a misdemeanor, felony, other crime? This is the application to Harvard Law School. If you have aspirations to become a lawyer, you have to disclose this. And these are open-ended questions. They want you to disclose everything. And if this happens before you're 18, you think it's not on my record, some of these questions, especially the bar application questions, which I'll show you next, they don't care if it's in a sealed record. They want you to tell, and if you don't tell them and they find out, they can revoke your license. So Harvard Law School, have you been convicted of a felony? Have you been convicted of a misdemeanor within the last 5 years? Or any charges pending? This is the Board of Bar Overseers application. To become a lawyer in the Commonwealth, you go to college, you go to 3 years of law school, you take and pass the bar exam, and then you submit an application to the Board of Bar Overseers, and they basically assess your moral character to see and decide whether they are going to give you the privilege to practice law. And one of the things that they look at is your background. Well, have you ever been charged with? So have you ever been charged with or been subject to any investigation for a felony or misdemeanor? They want everything back to the day you were in diapers. And you better disclose it, because if somebody tells the board and you did it, you're in big trouble. So that's one non-criminal repercussion for this type of conduct. Another non-criminal repercussion is athletics. The MIAA is the organization that governs the regulations or the rules for sporting in the state, high school sports. They set minimum standards for participation in athletics. As far as the consumption of alcohol, if you are caught with or consuming alcohol, the minimum standard, the first time, is you're precluded from playing in 25% of your contests. Second and subsequent are 60%. Many schools take that minimum, throw it out the door, and have zero tolerance policies. I'm not sure what your policy is here. This is just a picture of such a party down in the Norfolk area at King Philip High School. Right before the big homecoming game, all the seniors were at a party. Most of the seniors on the squad were at the party. The party was busted. None of those seniors were able, including the quarterback, were able to play at their big and final game. And this is what I do. So, civil liability. We talked about criminal liability. We talked about the way this stuff follows you. There's also civil liability. And civil liability is you have a party, somebody gets hurt, somebody is suing you, your parents, for money, for assets, you name it. The way lawyers like me do this is through claims like negligence. And negligence, for another lesson in the law, negligence is when you owe a duty to somebody, you don't live up to that duty, and because you didn't live up to that duty, something bad happens, and that person suffers damages. The way you can prove a duty in the breach of that duty is to say, you broke a criminal statute. So in the social host sense, if the duty is not to provide, not to furnish alcohol to people under 21 years of age, if you can prove to a jury that a party happened, alcohol was furnished by you illegally, and bad stuff happened, that gives the opportunity for lawyers to come after you for civil damages. So, next time you think about a party you're budgeting in your head or you're proposing a budget to your parents, $190 for a couple of kegs of beer, $90 for deposits, the tap, the tub, $32 for ice, $12 for cups, $50 for pizza, about $375 for a party seems fairly reasonable. Remember to budget for the $8.7 million civil judgment that could flow from that party to you and your parents. That's the amount of money that was awarded to Trista Zink and Neil Bornstein, Trista Zink's estate in Neil Bornstein. I'm going to close out just talking about Taylor Meyer. I don't know if you guys have had the privilege and the opportunity to hear Kathy Meyer, but Taylor Meyer was a 17-year-old, beautiful 17-year-old girl from King Philip High School. And this happened back in 2008. This is the case that I mentioned earlier where the party happened in the woods. And I'll give you the details. Basically, Taylor was at work that morning. It was the high school the homecoming game that day. So the plan was to have a pre-party at a girlfriend's house, then go to the game, and then go to the clearing in the woods. So Taylor and her friends have one of these young men go buy them a couple of handles of rum, and they, after work, they meet at this girlfriend's house. A bunch of girls. No, the guys weren't at the first party, just girls. And Mom was up in the kitchen, right above them. This party's going downstairs. They're drinking. They're loud. Mom is about 10 feet straight above them. They finish a lot of the rum, not all of the rum, but now it's time to go to the game. But at this point, Taylor's pretty drunk. A lot of the girls are drunk, and visibly so. People saw them going from this party to the game, and they could see that Taylor was pretty wasted. So she gets driven by some guys that come over to pick them up. They go to the game. They're at the game. She's visibly drunk. She's seen by parents. She's seen by a couple of teachers. But, you know, it's the high school game. Nobody's going to kill the party, so to speak. So nobody points it out. Nobody intervenes to help this drunk girl. Those same boys now take her to the Norfolk Airport. Now, Norfolk has this abandoned airport. It's a runway that's surrounded by fields. And after you get to the fields, there's a big area of woods. On the other side of the woods, there's a big marsh with a mill river running through it. In that wooded area, that's where those guys had cleared the party area. So they got the fire pit, they've got the ring of chairs, they got the tables set up for beer pong, they've got wood stacked, they've got trash cans for the empties. They clean it. They, it's their spot. So they park at a guy's driveway that lives there, and they walk about 200 or 300 yards across the grassy area, across the runway, and they get to the woods. Now, the woods, I've been to this site, I've been to this party location. The woods, the grass ends, and then there's just a wall of brush and woods. And these guys have cleared a little opening, you have to crouch down like this to get into it. And it's pitch dark out. It's about 7 or 8 p.m. at night. And in order to find it, you have to know where you're going, because this is probably a mile-long stretch of woods in the dark, basically. So these guys lead these girls, one of which is Taylor Meyer, who's drunk. They're using their flashlights, or their cell phones as flashlights, and they find that hole in the woods. And they wend their way through the woods on this windy path. The path's about that wide. And it's really hard to follow the path during the day. But these guys know where they're going. They lead the kids to the fire pit. The party's already going. The fire's going. Taylor's there. She's drunk. She continues to drink. She gets drunker. And she's there until about 11:30 p.m. This is in October. It's about 25, 30 degrees outside. They're in the woods. And if you remember, on the other side of the woods from the runway is a swamp and a river. So Taylor's drunk. She gets in a tiff with one of her girlfriends. They get in an argument, and she is drunk. Her reaction is to get outraged and wants to go home. So she starts marching off into the woods, except she's going the wrong way. The way out of the woods is behind her. She's marching off towards the swamp. The story from some of the people at the party is that some of those kids saw that she was going the wrong way and were laughing at her as she was marching off into the woods. We know she went that way because we found one of her shoes about 100 feet from the party circle in the mud. Now, and if you draw a straight line from where the party site was to where her shoe was found to where her body was found 3 days later, it's pretty obvious what she was doing. She was just going straight. She didn't know where she was going. That path took her through woods in October that were swamp, really, up, probably up mid-calf in mud. When she got to the swamp part, to the marshy part, she's probably wading through mud that is thigh high. Now she's wearing blue jeans, she's wearing a hoodie sweater. That's all she's got on. We know she's already lost one shoe. Now, her body was eventually found on the other side of the Mill River. So Taylor made it through about 100 yards of marsh, waded across a 20-foot wide river, and made it about 80 yards into the marsh on the other side of the river. And this is in the middle of nowhere. There are no lights. There's only one light, and it's on a bridge. It's on a pole on a bridge. It crosses the Mill River. The line that Taylor was following was heading straight for that light. So we think Taylor was trying to make it to civilization, trying to make it to that one light on the bridge to get help. She made it about 60 yards away from that when she finally succumbed to hypothermia. She fell forward and passed out and drowned in the swamp. She was found 3 days later. Now Taylor's mom, that night she was supposed to spend the night at a friend's house. So mom's not looking for her at 10, 11, 12 at night. She doesn't get a call from her daughter that morning. And not thinking about it because, she's at the friend's sleepover. And about noon, she finally calls the friend and says, "Where's Taylor?" The friend didn't think anything about Taylor who was supposed to stay where they're not being with her. That's when the red flags went up. So there was about a 2.5, 3 day manhunt that went on trying to find Taylor. Big, strapping, 30-year-old fit police officers and waiters mucking through that swamp, trying to find this girl. And they described the effort required to wade through this mud as the hardest thing they'd ever done. So you can imagine an intoxicated 17-year-old girl doing that, and you can picture her in she was found with no shoes, soaking wet with her hands wrapped up in her hoodie sleeves, her hood on. You can just imagine the ordeal she went through to get from the party to where she finally succumbed. So this is a video that was taken by the news right after Taylor was found.
Taylor Meyer Plainville was found dead yesterday near Norfolk. Last night, hundreds gathered at her high school in Rentham to remember the girl.
It was really surreal because you never think it could happen to somebody at your own school.
Around noon Monday, the students got word the body of the 17-year-old Plainville girl was found in a marshy and wooded area at Norfolk Airport. She and her friends were there Friday for an underage drinking party when she wandered off, telling friends her cousin was on the way to pick her up.
It's really sad. I still can't believe it. It's just I don't know, it's crazy.
These students say they've learned a lesson in her death. One decision can change things in the blink of an eye.
Kids are just super invincible, but they're not.
People would think this could never happen to them. We probably all thought this would never happen in such small towns, but it can, and it can happen to anyone, not just Taylor.
So you heard the statements, learned a lesson, that sort of thing. Well, you'd think that if something got off like this ever happened and when you lost one of your friends after a party like that, a lesson would be learned. I show these slides because 2 weeks later, 20 were arrested. 20 King Philip High School students were arrested at a party. 3 weeks later, 13 were arrested. 5 weeks later, 20 arrested at another party. This is what was written on the back of one of the windshields of the cars there at that party. This is Kathy Meyer. She's got in her hand a bunch of bracelets. These were bracelets that were created by her and the students to memorialize Taylor. All of the kids that were arrested at that party who were at this underage drinking party were wearing those bracelets. So, in conclusion, remember the bright line, 21 years old. It applies to you and it applies to the parties you throw. Remember the $8 million party, and remember the repercussions on your life. You do not want to be these people. Thank you very much.